Awesome. Wonderful. Hello, welcome everyone. We are here on this glorious Friday morning, depending on where you are. I'm hoping it's glorious everywhere. I have a nice little front came in. We are here today with Dale and Sean from TransCen. Dr. Robertson and myself are from Texas A&M University on the Center on Disability and Development. Just so everybody knows ahead of time, the presentation for today and the video will be available on our website. We are recording and live transcript is available if you need to use that. This presentation is focused on the new work-based learning RFP that we have available now. We are here to give you a solid background on work-based learning. Sean and Dale are awesome with this information, and you will find it very, very helpful. We are going to give you that background and then assist you with the process of applying and explaining the supports once those funds have been put into place. Please know that Dr. Roberts and I are here to support you along the way. Know that this is similar content to Tuesday and Wednesday, but we are going to be focusing today on those folks who are really new to work-based learning and are ready to start from the ground up. If you would please, let me see, I know we had our polls. If you would complete our first poll and let us know your role with transition and or work-based learning. That is open now, and I believe we are ready to go. Can we move on to, let me do the next slide real quick. Eric, do you mind?
Go for it. But yeah, do I mind doing it or do I mind you doing it?
Go for it. You do it. I'm like, wait a minute. This poll has me.
I was actually thrown off. I can see the poll this time. Something's.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I wasn't there. So I updated everybody that's new to this. I updated my Zoom, and like some reason it had less function than more function. But today I can see the polls again. So awesome.
Oh, and also everyone, let us know where you're from in the chat box so we can see who's represented here today.
Yeah, and I just posted a link to the PowerPoint as well as to our website. And here, after I get through talking, I'll also put it on a PDF because some of you don't have access to Google Drive stuff. So, but anyways, thank you so much. And like as we go along too, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we might address them at that time, or we might just address them towards the end. Kind of what we've been doing is addressing them at the time. Seems to kind of help the flow, making sure that we're getting information that you need. Again, this is going to be geared more towards our groups that are just trying to get started. Maybe you don't have maybe you need to work on the foundation. Maybe you have a lot of good ideas and just not quite sure how to get started, or those sort of things. And so that's the group we're gonna kind of focus on today. And so a little bit more about our new project, the Texas Work-Based Learning Project. What we're here for is we are all about just anything and everything we can do to help you start a work-based learning project. I mean, that's all we are about is work-based learning projects. We want to have them spread up throughout the state. Everyone have them, whether you have nothing, let's get it started. Whether you have something big, let's enhance that. And, and then kind of working on that continuum of services that you're providing to the students so that ultimately they all lead to employment at the end of the day. That is what we are hoping and are kind of the grand vision of this. And so what this looks like is we have an application where you can request up to $10,000 in funding to get a program either started or to, improve a program you currently have in place. And that doesn't mean you have to have ask for $10,000. If you need $500, you need $5,000, you need anywhere in between, up to $10,000, that's what we're here to help out with. And depending on what you're going to be doing and how much you might need. And we'll talk more about kind of different ideas and ways you can put this in place and ways that you can spend that money as we kind of go along. And then also we're providing a lot of technical support with this. And so the idea is kind of like a 3-tier level of technical support in conjunction with TransCen, who you'll learn more about here as we go through today. So we're going to do like our districts that oftentimes are very rural. I got the cold, so I already had trouble with that word, rural. Isolated. There you go. I can say isolated.
Right.
Small. country, farm out there, right? So, you have, oftentimes you have a lot of good ideas, but you just don't have the foundation, maybe, like with this, I do everything. I'm the sped director, I'm the bus driver, I'm the principal, I'm the everything. And then also I need to try to do this too. And I know I want to. And so, we're going to help out that group, kind of how do we help you kind of create those foundations and get things going. And then the middle group of kind of, we're already doing some stuff, but we really want to do more and get more out in the community, involve the community more. And then our third group of like, we're already doing quite a bit, but we just know we could do more. And how do we do more? And so those are the kind of the tiers of supports. And then that's once you get the funding. But prior to even getting the funding, Jackie and I are here to help you out with the application process. And I know, especially a lot of you maybe that are attending today, that you've never completed one of these before, and it seems pretty intimidating. Contact us and we'll help you out. We'll talk you through it and do as much as we can to kind of help you get ideas and make sure that you have a solid application for when we do a review for that. Because we're here, we want everyone to have this money. We're not trying to hold it, and only give it to the best of the best. We're trying to give it to people that need it. And often a lot of you that are attending today, you're the ones that need it. And we know that for sure. And so we want to make sure you have access to this. And so I will go ahead and pass this on to TransCen here in a minute. Oh yeah, thank you, Sean. Yeah, so what is work-based learning? And then they'll go way more into kind of the details of the different models and all that. But essentially, when we're working on experiences that teach work-based skills, right? The soft skills, the hard skills, the exploration, all those sort of things. And then the underline really kind of highlights really one of our only limitations, or not limitations, one of the things that we can't support with application. And that's it has to be an authentic work environment. And what does that mean? That means it's not self-contained. So not like a program that's within a life skills classroom and we're just working in work boxes. This needs to actually involve the community, and that the community can be, broadly defined, but as much as it can spread out to the community, involve the community and not be self-contained, that is something that we can support. And so they'll go way more into that of what that means. And so TransCen is the one that's here to talk to us today. And if you've not heard of them, definitely look them up. They are nationwide experts in helping youth with disabilities and getting jobs and that process, and helping out schools and providing technical support. And they're always doing trainings, throughout the nation, and do a lot of stuff with us here in Texas too. They're oftentimes with the Texas Transition Conference, and partner with us at the Center for Disability and Development at Texas A&M University. And so I'm very excited that they're here. I'm very excited that we're getting to partner with them with this project. And so I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Dale and Sean, and they're going to tell you a little bit more about who they are and what they do. And I saw in the chat someone's needing a PDF, and I'm going to add a PDF of the PowerPoint in there. So, all right. Thank you, guys.
Well, good morning, everybody, all you good folks from Texas. I'm going to ask Sean to introduce himself and just provide a little bit of information about our organization, TransCen, and then we'll get on with the details of the webinar.
Perfect. Thank you, Dale. Thank you, Eric and Jackie. Dale and I are thrilled to be here, thrilled that you're here with us on a Friday. My name is Sean Roy, and Dale and I represent an organization called TransCen, which is short for Transition Center. We are about a 35-year-old national training and direct service organization located physically in Rockville, Maryland. Even though Dale is coming to you very happily this morning from Madison, Wisconsin after a Packer victory. And I'm coming to you hopefully Sunday night from outskirts of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I don't want to cause any problems here, but I'm hoping for a Viking victory on Sunday night as well. So we really advocate for meaningful work and community inclusion for students and individuals with disabilities. And that is the focus of our work. As Eric mentioned, we do a great deal of training around the country, working with interagency school teams, vocational rehabilitation agencies, employment service providers, policymakers, families, and individuals to help them understand what it takes to really make a good job match and improve employment outcomes for people, including those with the most significant disabilities. And I hope that that's something that you guys are keeping in mind today as we talk about work-based learning, is how do we move the needle on those students that traditionally haven't had those opportunities. Our website is listed here. We have a lot of training and information on the website. And if you have any questions for us or want to get a hold of us, you can either go through inquiries@transcen.org, or Dale and I will share our email at the end of it. So Dale, take it away.
Okay, thanks, Sean. So somewhere in the do's and don'ts of being a trainer, I think there's probably something in there that you don't start your webinar by saying that you hope your football team beats their football team. But that's what just has happened here. But being a Green Bay Packer fan, I'm actually hoping the Dallas Cowboys are successful on Sunday evening. But enough about football. What we're going to cover today is the whole waterfront on work experiences. And we were really excited when Sean and I we were excited when we heard that we're going to be able to help on this project, because that's the focus of what it is you're applying these funds for, are these work experiences and for work-based learning. And so what you're going to hear from us is that of the pre-employment transition services, we really feel that the one that has some evidence of really being effective in achieving successful transition outcomes is the work-based learning. And that we hope that all of your pre-ed services kind of really support that. And that and the reason for this webinar is we really hope that you're able to incorporate these resources that are offered to you along with your work-based learning to really kind of enhance your transition program. So that's what we're going to be talking about. What does the research show us when it comes to work experiences, and how might that research have lent itself to specific types of legislation, so that we are as a industry, if you will, in terms of employment for youth with disabilities, we're all moving towards these best practices and what might be most effective in terms of transition related services. So that's the case that we're going to try to make to you this morning, is what's the legislation like? What's the research say? What is the importance of family involvement and work experiences? What are they? What different types are there? What makes for a quality work experience? We're going to give you some information on some models that we have some evidence in terms of their effectiveness, and in all of this information, what we're wanting you to do is think about it in the context of your work and your particular program, and where are you at now, and what's a logical next step for you all in terms of enhancing not only your program around transition for youth with disabilities, but what sort of goals and outcomes do you want to achieve moving forward? And then how can this grant kind of help you in that regard? We're going to finish up, Sean and I will finish up our part of the presentation, talking about the different types of technical assistance that we can provide you as part of your application for these resources. And so that's what's really nice too, is Texas A&M isn't just offering these dollars, but it's coming with some real good supports, both from Eric and Jackie, as well as from Sean and I. So that's what we'll be covering. And might as well just go ahead and get started on the literature review. So one of the studies, as you see up there, is that employment is increasingly becoming the focus of what a transition program should appropriately be about. And it's really what we hope this webinar will do is really kind of give you some really good ideas about how to rally around that and really start to think about, how effective are we at getting transition to employment, and what is it that we're doing well, and then what areas could we improve on. And usually when we work with transition programs, the enhancing of the work experiences is always part of their plan. And so that's why we're doing this today. And so this next study, children 15 to 18 that are in special ed programs, we're seeing a rising expectation that around employment and the perception that employment is an appropriate goal that should be part of the IEP and supported by the transition programs. Now, there's families where that isn't in fact the case, but we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But this rising expectation around employment, I think, has everything to do with the success of our integration within the school systems, and that as these youth are interacting with other people without disabilities, it's helping those youth and their families create this kind of notion that, well, if these other kids go out and get jobs while they're in high school, why not my son or daughter? So that's another important piece of information, and something that we're going to talk more about. Others have shown that that 60% of the people that we are supporting are still staying unemployed, and that number really hasn't improved. It hasn't gone down all that much in the time that I've been doing this work. And that there is still a fair amount of frustration around the coordination and the focus of these transition programs. Getting everybody on the same page, really assessing progress towards establishing these goals and assessing progress towards these goals have really shown that there's work to be done. Next study really looks at the two factors that best predict better outcomes, and one is 2 or more job experiences while in high school, and a key word there for me is job experiences, because some of those work experiences could be, for example, in the high school themselves. These are work experiences that involve employers, and when you have 2 or more, it's a predictor of the success of the transition program. And the fact that networks are really key to this whole thing, and that every single youth, including their families, are parts of their community. And so they have networks. And what we're learning is the transition programs that tap into some of those networks and those potential employers, especially potential employers that might know that particular youth, are great ways to help set this person up for a successful transition to employment from school. Work experience and employment preparation, paid or unpaid, is really the focus, and the fact that many of the studies have really supported the role that these work experiences have played in the success of a transition program. And obviously the emphasis on paid work experiences is one that is an even better predictor, but both are very important and necessary as part of a youth's experience before exiting school. So another study really kind of underscored this notion of family involvement. When the family is on board with the concepts around employment, and there is some fairly successful communication between the schools and the families, that it does enhance academic achievement. So if we can get them on board with this, then they can also help reinforce this notion of employment. They can be looking for what are the things that really tell us this person's interested in certain types of jobs, and what tasks can this particular person do successfully that might inform us in terms of different kinds of employment opportunities that they would be successful at. So getting them on board with what we're trying to do with transition is critical. And you're going to hear more about that from Sean in a little bit. So So the recent highlights of what we consider to be this literature review is the importance of some sort of employment training and work experiences while in high school, the role that families play in the successful transition and future for their sons or daughters, and that career awareness, those work experiences, and whenever possible, some sort of vocational training are all very strong predictors of what might then be a successful transition program. And you're going to hear more about what we think defines a successful transition program and the characteristics of it as we go through the rest of this presentation. So when you have these kinds of studies, what I really I think is important to understand is that is the information and the evidence that is used when legislation and policies are developed. It's based on what we're learning. And so based on what we're sharing with you in terms of what we're learning, what we're finding is that the legislation and policies are following suit. So what we're trying to see is they want more and better post-secondary education outcomes for youth. They want to see a stronger tie in the IEPs and with the indicators that we'll go over a little bit later. They want to see that solid path towards employment that does involve family, that does tap into networks that might be available on behalf of each of these individuals, and that we are now seeing that students can no longer go from school to what they consider to be segregated work, or working where other people with disabilities work. At one time, those were best practices, and the schools were rightfully moving people because those were their best employment options, were to work at a community rehabilitation program. But what that meant is that we had very simple IEPs. IEP would say, leaving school, going to this rehabilitation facility. Now, based on current legislation, that is no longer an option. They want to see that they're moving from school to a job in the community, or at least participation in the community. And so that changes the conversations that need to happen between schools and adult service providers. And that ultimately the legislation and the policy is steering us towards less reliance on federal entitlements. So those are kind of a summary of kind of what we're seeing in terms of legislation and policy. And more specifically, there are now more states that are employment first states than are not. And what that really underscores is, again, the changing perspective and expectations related to youth with disabilities. And what it says is, if a person has employment in their plan when they start to receive adult services, that they have to opt out of employment rather than to opt in. So in the past, especially when considered acceptable practice was to have them move into sheltered workshops, then employment wasn't the priority. But now it is. And so somebody has to make the case, I don't want employment, in order to opt out of it. Otherwise, there's a presumption by the system, by all of us, that employment should be considered for this person, particularly when they exit school. And most employment first policies or usually executive orders also do a nice job of defining what they mean by employment. And so you see that list that's up on the screen: individual, integrated, it's employment where it's on somebody else's payroll, and it's at or above minimum wage. And so that precludes things like group employment or some of the Ability One contracts that some of the folks might go into. It's really a focus on an individual placement out in the community. And so this definition, I think, should also help inform the outcome and desired goals of our transition programs as well, especially if yours is an employment first state, which I understand that to be the case. So what does it take to make that happen? Work experiences. You're in the right place. This is the webinar to be at. And it's because we want to see work experiences early and often. And it's not only a desired outcome, but it's an actual intervention. Paid work before school exits is the best indicator of their opportunities or ability to achieve employment post-school. And that those connections that they're going to need when they're no longer part of your school system need to be discussed and identified and ideally arranged in advance of the exit of those folks from school. And again, more important than ever, based on the WIOA legislation that says a person can't come from school to a segregated work environment. They've got to consider other options. What else does it take to make it happen? Employers. If we're talking about paid employment, they need to be a key partner in all this. And some of our technical assistance is really focused on that, how to kind of help you ensure that employers are a key transition partner. It's an area that we feel a lot of the transition programs can benefit from, along with this next bullet, youth and family empowerment. So when Sean and I go around and work with different sites, those two tend to be most asked for when it comes to technical support, because it's so important to achieving all those things that we just got done talking about. And of course, heightened expectations, the presumption of employment, regardless of the significance of their disability. And so that's also important. So is there a consistent message that's being made? And I mentioned those employers and that they're an important partner. But we'll talk a little bit later about the fact that a lot of times our approach to those employers is such that they feel like they're doing us a favor. They're being a good community partner, that they are helping out kids with disabilities. And we think that's the wrong conclusion of their involvement with our transition programs. So we don't think that when they have that perspective, it's very sustainable. What we think is sustainable is when the employers are involved in your transition programs because they benefit. They benefit either by making money, saving money, or operating more efficiently. And that's an important message that we want to give to all of you, is that your transition programs can and do benefit these employers in very meaningful ways. And when you're able to communicate that, or more importantly, make that happen on behalf of these employers, then you have a long-term partner that would be willing to work with you on an ongoing basis. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sean to kind of wrap this section up to talk about optimal transition programs and what they might look like.
Excellent. Thank you, Dale. I appreciate everybody still sticking with us, despite my football faux pas in the beginning. I found it a little bit strange that Jackie put Go Cowboys in the chat box when she's a Saints fan. But, you know, when in Rome, right? So we have the chat box too. So a lot of this information that we're giving to you today might be, I don't know if I'd call it new information. It might be intriguing information, and we'd love to hear your reactions to this and any questions that you have. You can just put them in real time and we can stop and any questions or reactions to the information that we're given. Really, this webinar is for you as you consider how do you put together your application for this, and how do you prepare to ramp up some work-based learning in your district. So we want to just make sure that we're hitting the mark and that we're having a dialogue here. So Dale did a great job going through the lit review, and the purpose of that is for us to let you know that there's a research support for the things that we are talking about. Particularly intriguing to me is this idea of employment being the gold standard of transition programs, right? I think that really lends some structure. It lends a brass ring for us to try to reach for in terms of what it is that we're doing with students and why we have transition programs in the first place. So what do optimum transition services look like in a perfect world? What would a great transition program entail? Youth empowerment certainly is something that is important, and we don't necessarily touch on as much in this webinar, which is unfortunate because we do as adults love to make decisions for students still, and we need to do a lot better job of, despite their disability, despite the impact of the disability and any communication or behavior difficulties, making sure that youth, the voice of youth and what they want for their life is really what's driving what we're doing. And how do we get that? If a young person doesn't seem to be very insightful, for example, about the future, how do we make them excited about the future and expose them to different careers so they can make an informed choice? We'll talk about family involvement a little bit later. Optimum Transition Services also seeks to link academic preparation with work experiences. They're not two separate things. We don't want to track where kids are going to a work track or they're going on an academic track. We recognize that a lot of the skills that are gained through academic preparation are transferable into the work environment. And you know, such as technology skills and reading skills, math skills, problem solving skills. Those are all things that you need at work. So there shouldn't be two separate components. How do we link those two to make them make some sense? Early connections to post-secondary services as well. You know, not all students with disabilities require all adult supports from the disability services world. You know, some students may not need TWC. Some students may not need developmental disability services. But those that do need to be connected early. And we're going to talk a little bit later about a concept called seamless transition and why it's important to make sure people are connected early. And as Dale said, and I'm going to say over and over again too, work, work, and work. Work is good, as our friend Rich Luking says, and as many work experiences as we can promote is really going to help the young people that we're working with be more successful in the employment world. So in the future, what do we see looking into the crystal ball in terms of transition programs and work-based learning? Again, this idea of models that are a lot better at linking academic instruction and work-based learning. And I would also add CTE to that, you know, models that help students with disabilities take advantage of career and tech ed programs, because that's traditionally been a very difficult nut for students with disabilities to crack and for all of us to crack, frankly. More collaborative transition models. We don't expect you to do this yourself. You shouldn't be doing this yourself. You can't operate a quality work-based learning program in isolation. You need to have partners in the community to help you out. And employers are probably amongst the best partners that you can have. I would go back to the CTE models, career and tech ed models. A lot of those are connected to real employers. They're connected to the trades. They understand labor needs. I would argue, and I'm sure Dale would argue as well, that if we could link employer needs and employer-led initiatives to work-based learning and transition programs, we might find that would be a really promising practice. And then something that's near and dear to my heart is this idea of staff training. Now, you guys in Texas have wonderful support through projects like Texas A&M, through the transition project at TEA from Sam Houston State. You've got the regions, right? So I've worked with the individual regions before, and I'm probably missing a bunch. You guys are loaded when it comes to support. We need to train our professionals to be able to do the things that we're talking about, because chances are you haven't had a lot of training on this in your pre-service world. Engaging families, empowering youth, outreach to employers effectively, and the effective facilitation of customized, individualized work-based learning. Those are things that need to be trained on. And that's what I'm hoping that you guys would consider as part of this, that maybe using this as a training opportunity to build that capacity to do these things. Now, I'm a family advocate at heart. In fact, I came from the family training world before I got the job at TransCen, and I have a younger brother with a developmental disability. Have watched my family navigate service systems for him and the ups and downs of schooling and social interactions and the whole 9 yards. I believe that if we engage families, they will help us improve our outcomes. I also believe that if we are not appealing to families, they are going to not help us achieve our outcomes. And we are going to end up in a place where we're blaming each other for why we're not embracing employment. So we need to look at family partnerships and really be mindful of what it is that we're doing. And this includes raising expectations that work is possible. Very simply, talking to families and say, yes, your son has a disability. It may be significant, but we know that in some way, shape, or form, he can work in the community. The work may look differently for everybody. We may not be talking 40 hours a week at first. We may not even be talking 15 hours a week at first, but work is possible in the community. And there are so many benefits to working in the community and involving them in the common goal. You know, does your transition program explicitly say, one of the things we're going to do is get community-based work experiences, and we need your help in doing that? I think just simply saying it would be a very pragmatic approach, and utilizing their knowledge in your assessment activities to say, hey, what businesses in the community does your daughter seem to gravitate towards? Where do you think she would be successful? And do you know anybody there? Do you have any contacts that we can talk to, right? Families have networks. Families are members of their community. And that's a huge resource that we don't always tap into. We talked about connecting them to resources, and this isn't just resources in terms of employment. I'm talking about things like benefits planning for Social Security, because I'm sure a lot of you out there work with families who have apprehension about competitive employment because they believe that they're going to lose, their son or daughter will lose Social Security. And we know that that's not necessarily the case. We know that there are projects out there that help families with benefits planning, but we need to connect the two, or else we're going to have families out there that are making decisions based on bad information, and we really don't want that. And another plug for training staff in terms of engaging families, because engaging families is an art form. It takes some skill. Not everybody's good at it. Not everybody is built for it, but there are some tools that you can use to really help build the relationship and foster some communication. So I mentioned Rich Luking. Dr. Rich Luking recently retired from the University of Maryland and co-founder of TransCen, our home office. And he is just a well-respected national thinker when it comes to students with disabilities and transition and work-based learning. Dale's going to mention his book here in a little bit, but you know, I like using this slide because it basically just lays it out. The most important predictor of post-school employment for youth with disabilities is whether or not they've achieved work experiences in some sort of paid employment prior to school exit. It is important that their secondary education include exposure to work experience, which could include things like work sampling, career exploration, visits to employers, and most importantly, in jobs where they're paid by an employer. Most important predictor of post-school employment success are work experiences. So if we want our students to be as prepared as possible to be employees after they leave us, we need to give them opportunities to practice the work and explore the work that they're interested in. That, to me, just lays out the responsibility that transition programs, not just in Texas, but all across the country, have to really focus on facilitating these community-based work experiences. And looking at what they currently provide students and saying, is that meeting the mark? And again, I'm not anti-school-based enterprises, but I do think that sometimes we get situations where our two work experiences are, hey, they wiped tables in the cafeteria and they shredded paper in the office. That's not community-based, and it's not super helpful unless the student is seeking a career in wiping tables. We need to connect them to the jobs that they're interested in and help them learn more about them and practice those jobs, right? And we know that work experiences benefit students and youth. We know that there's so much that comes with the opportunity to work alongside people without disabilities, to make informed choices about what they want to do, and to be able to understand what it means to work as part of the workplace culture, which is going to be very different working in a farm or a lumber yard than say working in a lawyer's office, depending on what it is that people choose to do. We've seen firsthand the impact that it has on self-esteem, even getting their first paycheck. If you've ever seen pictures of people holding up their first paycheck, it's just like, that's why we do it. That's why we do it, because that's a lifetime of earning that we're setting these people on the path for, and that's what we want. And then developing their own networks. So in the future, they can call up and say, hey, I'm interested in moving into a different job. Do you know anybody that works here? Do you know anybody that works there? It gives them valued social roles in our country to be able to have employment. And we also know that work-based learning is beneficial to school programs, because we know that you've got legal requirements and compliance that you're responsible for. We're not ignoring the realities of working in a school program. So having better work-based learning would allow you to have a higher quality of IEP and the transition plans that are required by special ed law, that you would be matched with what the vision that Dale was talking about for students with disabilities. And additionally, there's positive outcomes that can be contributed to through your compliance indicators, namely indicator 2, which is the dropout indicator, 13, which is the percentage of IEPs that have measurable post-secondary goals based on quality assessment, and indicator 14, which is 1 year after exit, the percentage of students that have either employment or are enrolled in post-secondary education, or both. Those are indicators that we're all responsible for if you work in a school district, and work-based learning helps you so you can reach those. And right now, WIOA, the legislation, Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act, also requires vocational rehabilitation agencies and schools to have a collaborative relationship on behalf of students with disabilities, including some type of a formal MOU. That's why TWC's involvement in all of this is so important. They have to be at the table because they are the gatekeepers for a lot of what happens with students with disabilities. So that if you don't currently have that working relationship with TWC in your school, that also might be a really nice place to begin when it comes to thinking about putting together your work-based learning program. Dale, did you want to jump in?
Sure.
I just kind of saw you do the lean.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I was looking at my notes.
Know that when Dale leans in, it means that he's got something to say. So, no?
No, I was looking at my notes.
Okay.
I had something.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like you're talking about the benefits of it, and we discussed this before. Like once you have the students on a genuine work experience, and they'll typically they step up, right? I mean, we'll see a different student, a different person, whenever they're actually on a job and someone's genuinely relying on them to get something done. A lot of times we talk about, behavior, behavior is going to get in the way, or ability and motivation, different things like that. But once they get on a job where someone's, genuinely like, you have to get this done because if I'm relying on you to get this done, we see them step up. And then another benefit, so which is great, we get to see a new student. And then also a benefit to that is everyone around them sees a different student, which motivates them to open up their mind to what's possible for the student, including the family. Because I was thinking of, we have a particular experience where we had a student that he would ride the A&M bus, and then he was going on to campus, to his job, and his mom, we would struggle with her really seeing him as someone that could be employed. She was on a break. She, stepped out, she was walking around on her break and saw him get off the bus without anybody with him, go right into his job. And right then she contacted me, and she's like, I was wrong. He can work. This is, just being able to see wow, he was actually be able to get on the bus and get to work independently, get on the job and do that. He didn't have someone following him around to make sure it happened. He did it on his own. Really opened up her mind to what is possible for her child. And so that's another benefit of it too. It opens up the child, it opens up the family, it opens up, and then some of the teachers that oh, wow, that kid did what? And so it really kind of blooms whenever you can create these authentic work experiences. So that's all I had to say.
No, Eric, I agree 100%. In fact, I go back to this slide and encourage anybody who's listening, who's thinking about bolstering or even creating a work-based learning program, that these are really the benchmarks that you should be looking at. When you think about the activities that you're putting together, you know, this is almost kind of a checklist for you, and say, you know, are these components of it, excuse me, available to students? And the impact, you're right. I mean, you know, we as Eric has said before in previous conversations, and I've heard many times, and I believe it 100%, we need to give students the opportunities to surprise us. We are not here to make predictions about what students can do and then just hold them to that standard that we've created. We need to give students the opportunities to take risks, to explore. Failure is an option, and it's okay, because that's where we learn from. And we need to give them opportunities to be better than we give them credit for. So I really do appreciate that. I do appreciate that outlook. You know, in terms of then, we're talking about work experiences, and we just wanted to go over what we mean by that. So what are some examples of some work experiences? And we tend to look at work experiences kind of as a continuum. So you start with some exploration activities, and you go all the way to, you know, an actual paid job, and it can be anything in between. And I think a work experience is really anything that gives the student the opportunity to learn more about the job and to determine if that's actually a job they want to do, right? You know, the example that I often use is that many students want to be video game designers. But when they go into, if they would ever go into a place that does that, they would see that there's a lot of people sitting in front of computers all day long. And what they're doing is coding. What they're doing is they're doing computer graphics. It's not just sitting around a room, you know, drinking energy drinks and saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was 3 dragons over here? And, you know, what we got to do is this amulet on the wall. You know, that's not what video game designing is. It really is. So giving kids the opportunity. Another example is veterinary. A lot of kids want to work with animals, but when they get the opportunity to see what a veterinarian has to do, a lot of the times, they don't quite think about that as much, or maybe they do. Maybe they're like, hey, this is for me. So it starts with career exploration, visiting to workplaces, interviewing employers like an information interview, and saying, you know, can I have a half an hour of your time? How did you get into this? What education do you have? Tell me something I don't know about being a landscaper. You know, just really digging deep into that. It might lead to a job shadow. Can I come and watch you for a half a day, just so I can get a sense of what this job is actually like? Work sampling is the opportunity to learn aspects of jobs in the workplace, but also learning soft skills and those social problem solving type of skills. What do you do if you're what you're supposed to do, but then somebody tells you to do something different at that time? How do you shift? How do you ask for help? Those types of skills are all great work experiences. We segue into service learning, and I think service learning is a great idea to connect kids to their community. So if you were to create a community garden, or if you were to help out expanding a food shelf, you know, that gives kids real world work skills, but also let them know that employment can mean something outside of getting paid. And it's a great opportunity to learn. Internships tend to be a bit more formal. They tend to be a bit more long-term. So you're doing specific things for a predetermined amount of time, right? So my internship, I'm doing data entry for a local dairy farm or something like that. They can be paid or unpaid. And sometimes they're connected to post-secondary education. Sometimes they're connected to summer workforce types of programs. Apprenticeships are often seen as more along the line of the trades. I think we can, as a field, can do a lot better connecting kids to trades, kids with disabilities, because there's a lot of great jobs there, but we still haven't quite found that sweet spot yet. Many apprenticeships include paid work components, though. If you have a kid that has that ability, there's no reason why that can't happen. Getting into stipend jobs, again, youth employment programs might have these types of things, or possibly DD type of services might have some of those stipend types of jobs. And then ultimately the best work experience is a paid job. And sometimes just keep in mind that a work experience in a school doesn't mean a kid can't have a paid job outside of school. They can work in concert with each other, right? As many opportunities as we can promote is really important. So I want to throw it back to Dale because he's going to talk a little bit about some models that we've identified. Oh, I'm actually going to talk one more slide. That's what I'm going to do. And talk about, so the characteristics of quality work experiences. So not all work experiences are created equally. And I don't want to come off as negative, but I do want to promote the idea that it's quality work experiences we're talking about. It's not just any old work experiences that we're talking about. So there needs to be clear program goals. Why are we doing this? The building of skills is ultimately the connecting to supports, the exploration of careers. Clear expectations as to what the progress is going to look like and how we're going to assess that. Roles and responsibilities of the people who are facilitating it and who are supervising the young person on the job, right? So making sure that everybody's on the same page, that it involves some type of learning, right? So it's not just, oh, they're off-site in the community, so that must be a work experience. They must be learning some skills that are going to lead to a job that they're interested in. And there should be a range of opportunities, right? So, and this is particularly challenging for places that are rural, is that, I said it, it's hard to find what do you do if you run into a student that says they really want to do something, but that might not be available within a 25, 30, 40 mile radius. How do you get creative to be able to facilitate that type of an opportunity? And then really documenting, right? You got to document feedback from the young people, the feedback from employers. How are we doing? Are we doing this effectively? And is there anything that we can change? This checklist as well, this set of bullets is another thing to keep for yourself as you put together your applications, because you can reference this to make sure that what it is that you're choosing to do aligns with what we consider to be quality work experiences. So now I'll hand it to Dale, and you can talk about national transition models.
Yeah, I mean, not only could you use that list of characteristics to think about, okay, if I'm putting a work experience together, how does it fit in with our overall transition efforts to date? And at which of these characteristics do we want to kind of build in? And then that might even help you think about, well, what kind of resources might we need from the grant to really kind of make some of that happen? And you can do the same thing with that list of different kinds of work or types of work experiences, because you can build a work experience or work-based learning program that has multiple ways of achieving these work experiences. So for example, you heard Sean talk about if you have some sort of work experience at the school, that it's not really as much of an authentic work environment and it's not going to help the student as much. Well, if you have those work experiences that are out in the community, but also some of it might be reinforced by a work experience at the school, then that is still complementary. And so that's what we're thinking about in terms of, helping you think through kind of how might you design some of this. So if you have different kinds of work experiences, they can complement each other. And so we're just trying to help you think about and give you and your team some ideas to brainstorm in terms of kind of what to put together. And again, that is also a type of technical assistance that we can assist you with as well. So we're hoping there's a number of different slides that when it comes to what is possible with experiences and what the evidence is telling us in terms of best practices, that you can then incorporate into your planning and into your proposals. But for the folks that have already have some models in place, what we have found is that there's 3 that now have some evidence behind it, where we know that there's a certain level of efficacy in terms of the model. And so the first one we're highlighting here is the Bridges School to Work program that's offered through the Marriott Foundation. And one of the sites of the 11 is in Dallas. So you have a chance there really to kind of possibly learn more about that Bridges program. And we know that their employment rates exceed the typical rates for youth that transition from school. And it does have a strong partnership between the schools and the VR agencies and the workforce agencies. And so I think what's really interesting about that model is the collaboration and the flexibility that model looks different in each of these cities. And we happen to know a lot about the Bridges program because when the Marriott Foundation was first starting to move in this area, they actually contracted with TransCen, and we helped them to kind of build the program, and we did the initial training of all the Bridges staff that were being brought on board. So it's a really good model. The second one is something I'm sure all of you are somewhat familiar with, which is Project Search. But what I think is important is Project Search has certain components to it that you can incorporate into your transition program. So one of the key aspects of the Project Search model is that it is employer-led. It starts with the employer, and even the academic aspects of it that are mirrored with the work experiences are done at the employer's place of business. And because it's employer-led, it better ensures that they're getting out of it what they need to justify their continued involvement in the project search. If you were to go to any of the hospitals or other sites where project search exists, and you were to talk to the employers and you said to them, are you doing this out of charity? Are you doing this to help people with disabilities, and to be a good corporate citizen? I would assume they would say, no, this benefits us. We're training some young folks that when they graduate, we have first pick for good employees who are trained within our own business and our own nomenclature and vernacular, the things that make our business unique to us. These folks have been trained and have been working here for a year. And so they do get a lot out of it. And a 75% placement rate really kind of think underscores that. So it's the leadership, the fact that they kind of take the lead in this. And again, you can do a project search-like type of transition model where you get an employer who understands and benefits from this, and you partner with them, and they maybe lead it, and you can continue to have aspects of the project search model. You can also, for example, use some of these funds to help develop a project search site. So that's just another thing to kind of keep in mind. The third model is seamless transition, and it's a very simple concept. The first day of their life, when they've exited the school system, should look just like the last day that they were a part of the school system. And so ideally, that includes a job. So if they have paid employment before exiting, then they're more likely to have that first day as an adult outside the school system to look like the one before. And that means also that all the supports or the linkages with the adult provider system has all been put in place. So think about that from the individual and the family's perspective. They know what to expect. The youth knows what to expect. The supports are in place. The job is in place. That is an ideal seamless transition effort. And so there's components to that in terms of working more effectively as a team. It's incumbent upon good person-centered discovery so that these placements are very individualized. And it needs that collaboration between the schools and in some cases the workforce system or VR. And so this is also a model that TransCen has been very involved in development of. Sean already referred to Rich Looking, and you can see the citing of the way to work That publication through Brooks is now in its second edition, and the second edition just came out, I think it was last year. So it's a great book. Particularly like the last 2/3 of it are really just how to set up good, effective work experiences. And they give you a lot of tools and kind of a process for setting up something like that. So strongly recommended as a resource for you all, the way to work. Make sure to get the second edition. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Sean, because for you all, especially if you're just getting going, this topic around collaboration and coordination amongst interagency partners, I think is a really important discussion.
Thanks. Thank you, Dale. And yeah, I mean, for sure, in short, you need to have the partners in place, the infrastructure in place, the policies and practice in place to be able to do the things that we're talking about. And we've gone into schools, the national work that Dale and I have done, and we've done similar training, but what we end up doing is working with them, with interagency school teams, to help conceptualize what their interagency team looks like and needs to look like to be able to pull off some of these things. And so the question really is, do you have all of these pieces in place? Or is this something that you're going to need to build? Do you have the capacity to utilize these strategies? And what I mean by that is, do you have staff? Do you have the desire? Do you have administrative support? Do you have the ability to fund work experiences or to seek partnerships where you can collaboratively braid funding to be able to pay for what's necessary to do work experiences? The last webinar we did on Wednesday, a question came up regarding transportation. And certainly we know in many of those isolated parts of Texas, this is a big deal. And so how do we think about this creatively to help students be connected to the jobs that they want, within reason? And then the ability to support students on the work site, because some students, a lot of students may require staff to be with them for a certain amount of time, right? You may have to for liability reasons if it's a school-based activity. And so it's just figuring out all of these little things. And this might, again, it's a piece of the technical assistance that we can offer, is to do some virtual strategic planning with you and leadership and some partners to say, what can this look like? And what should this look like? What are the pieces that we need to put in place? Oftentimes it's a longer process to put teams together than people think, but really doing that delineation of roles and responsibilities is important. This is a tool we call a flow of services. I just wanted to show this to you as an example of just a very simple tool that can be used to say, all right, here are the outcomes that we want to achieve through the age span. And here are the roles and responsibilities of our various partners. And the partners that are listed on the lower left by no means are an exhaustive list of partners, but again, it's just what is TWC going to do? What is the school going to do? What might a community-based employment program, a center for independent living, anybody that you can bring on board, an employer group, anybody that you can bring on board. It's about delineating roles and responsibilities and making sure that you've got this infrastructure in place to really deliver this program the way that you want to. And throwing it back to Dale, because we know that a lot of you are looking at this idea of social enterprises and wanted to give you some ideas of what that can look like, still aligned with the pieces that we're talking about.
Yeah, so if you're looking at a social enterprise type of, kind of on-site business that would teach certain skills and maybe expose them to some aspect of work, we think that if you go back through, again, the literature review and all the things that we've talked about in terms of characteristics of successful transition programs, they would apply to this type of a work experience strategy around social enterprises. So does it help? And I think the key word there is documented. Increased career awareness in terms of what their options might be. Are you able to document additional skills, aptitudes, or or identify specific tasks that they can complete successfully? Does it have some sort of communication or coordination, ideally, with the student's family? Does it get tied to academic instruction? And again, another list of things that you could then incorporate into your application in terms of what it is you're doing and what it is that you're hoping to accomplish. Again, this notion of tapping into networks can be a component of this. So if you have this enterprise and it's, let's say it's something like dog grooming, something like that, then you could have some sort of networks with other grooming organizations. And maybe you have kind of a multiple work experience kind of thing where maybe some of that grooming is done on site, where animals from families that are part of the school, bring them in and you do this grooming, but maybe it also involves a job shadow with a groomer out in the community, or a work experience that they would participate in both locations. So that just kind of gives you ideas about what to think about. It also allows you to identify the supports. And each individual student is going to have a need for different supports. So it really kind of helps you identify what those might be. And then it gives you that opportunity to make sure that it has a clear goal. Or if it is a social enterprise, how does that fit in with your other pre-employment transition services and with your other elements of your transition program? And so ultimately, are the expectations clear? And do you have a way to kind of track what progress towards those goals might look like? So those are all things that we think are important for you to consider, especially if you are looking at a social enterprise. The last slide for us is this notion of how we can help and support you. And I think particularly some of these, well, actually all of these would really apply even more so for, I think, programs that are just getting off the ground, or they're just starting to grow or expand what it is they're trying to do. Because there might need to be some assistance in figuring out how a work-based learning is going to fit in with the other pre-ed services that others may be providing. And that notion of building that interagency team, we can help facilitate some of that. We can do some strategic planning. And if you're just getting going and you're really trying to figure out how to expand this or have more impact with what you're doing, that's going to take more hands on deck. And so that's where we can kind of help you with the planning and engaging other interagency partners. And so also supporting these students on site so that they get the development of their skills and they know how to integrate and participate in other people's workplaces. The training for staff on workplace supports is also something we can assist with. And then lastly, on-site coaching. We think the best way that staff get to skill development is by the opportunities to actually apply the concepts and to do it in real time with students and with employers. And so we do offer on-site where we can kind of model some of these strategies. We tend to focus on discovery and assessment. We tend to focus on family engagement, and we tend to focus on employer engagement. And so all of those are possible roles that we can play if we did come on site. The reason it says potential is there's obviously some, costs associated with trying to get on site to work with you. So there's no, so those funds would have to be identified and coordinated before we could provide that. But if that is of interest to you, I'm sure Eric and Jackie can kind of talk to you further about how to make that type of technical assistance happen. Okay, so with that, I think I will turn it back over to Jackie and Eric.
All right, thank you. I wanted to address a couple of the questions before I forget about them. I already lost this one. Let's see here. This is work-based learning was previously all unpaid, was comprised of 4 phases, as was governed by a statute, the specific number of work hours for each phase. Does this still apply? No, it does not apply. I mean, we want to try to be, very individualized as possible, and making sure that we're creating what works for our students and what their needs are, and that there's no requirement that it must look anyway, honestly, other than the idea, the hope is that it leads towards employment, and they're getting genuine employment experiences. Let's see here. Then there was another question about class hours, classes that we can be used for the work-based learning, and that's always been kind of a challenge. Yes, right now it seems like employability skills is the one that most schools are using, and it's pretty limited because you really don't have as much time as you might need to really get out in the community and have these experiences. And so I know that other classes that we can do, and you have to work with your PEMS person on your campus and your district in order to because oftentimes they don't want us to do it because they're tied to CTE money, and then so if you'd had to be CTE certified and that sort of thing. But I was able, when I was in the district, to get that code, to get it recoded so that it took the CTE part off of it. And so we were able to teach career investigations, career prep, and then career prep, and then career exploration. And so there's 3 different levels of classes that we were able to kind of teach that really allow us to have more time to get out into the community and provide the students the credits that they need to graduate too, without taking that away. Because that was also oftentimes an issue of like, well, we have these classes and they're not earning the credit, but they still need credit in order to graduate. And so being able to do that. And then also, like, by the time they get to their junior and senior year, there's several classes. If they've been consistently taking classes, they might not actually need a lot of credit. And so you can create some local credit classes as well through your district, where maybe they're not actually earning credits, but it gives you opportunity to have them in your class for the amount of time, or attached to them the amount of time that you need them to be attached to you in order to work with them. So if there's any more questions. This poll popped up here. Now the CTE rules and regulations, they do, you can through PEMS, you're able to, I'm not a PEMS person. I was never a PEMS person, but I worked with our PEMS person in the district, and they were able to take the CTE part off of it, because also the CTE part of having to have those rules and regulations was the funding. The funding went to CTE, and that was also a problem, because if there wasn't CTE certified teacher teaching it, then they wouldn't be able to do that. And so kind of work with your PEMS person on being able to work on the funding and how they're coding that to be able to open that up for you. All right, so the application process, I wanted to say that this is kind of the general outline of this, of how it goes down. So we have the application. I know that especially if this is something that you've never done, or you're a smaller district and those sort of things, this is going to be a very overwhelming process for you. So I really want to express, like, Jackie and I are here to help you out with that. If you're sitting down, you're not sure about your ideas, or if maybe you have a rough draft of what this might look like, send it to us and we can go through it, or set up a time to meet with us and we'll meet with you and kind of go over the process and what it is that Jackie will go a little more of what we're looking for, but help you out to make sure that this meets your needs as well as the needs we have to have within the application to be able to fund it. But so please don't hesitate to reach out. Like if you send an application and we send back like, hey, there's some things that we need to improve, that means we like it and we want to fund it, but we just need to see we need to see certain things added to that in order to be able to fund it. And also, when you're creating these applications, think of it like a transition plan, and like, we're just really trying to get a good foundation in place, to be able to move forward with. And Jackie and I know that once you kind of the boots hit the ground, the things are going to change, and that's fine. We're not going to hold you accountable to, like, you said you were going to do these things, and this is the timeline, and this is how you're going to spend your money. Like, we're not holding you accountable. What we are doing is we might be checking in with you to see how we can help. Is there anything else we can do? Is there anything else we can help you purchase? Is there any training we can help provide or connect you to, and that sort of thing? That would be our follow-up. Our follow-up's not to make sure that what you say in there is exactly what's going to happen. And then too, like, you don't have to think of everything right now, because this is a multi-year project. And so, like, maybe whatever you get going today is what you need to get started. And then further down the road, you're going to maybe expand on it and grow we'll be here for that too. Like there's nothing that says you can't apply more than one time. I mean, probably not more than one time within a couple of months, but more than one time within a year or two, that could be reasonable, and if some of you might have received our funding from the capacity building, that doesn't disqualify. You can apply for this. I'm pretty open to who can apply, and know that so like deadlines is something that is really important to everybody. That we review the applications at the beginning of each month, and so if you want to get it in sometime during that month, to have us kind of give you some feedback, how great, or if you just hey, I need to make sure I get this in, know that that's when we're reviewing it. And so if you need a deadline, like, hey guys, we got to get this done by December 1st, because they're going to be reviewing it at that time. Well, that's what we're going to be doing each month. And this is a multi-year program. Again, I'm trying to think of what else I'm forgetting to say. Kind of got caught up in one of my little rant I was going off of. Anything else? I can't think of it. Okay. Well, go on, Jackie.
Yeah, I'm like, no, you're good. Next one. Okay, so real quick, because I know we have some questions and answers, and I definitely want y'all to value your time with Sean and Dale. 6 main things that we're looking at on the application, if you could move over. Okay, so the first thing, you're going to identify a team to work with. We understand that this team might change throughout your process. You need to make sure that one person at least is not in the school itself. But I would also urge you to not make your team so unyielding that you can't get a hold of everyone, that things get too crazy. So, just get a conservative group that will be able to review things with you, work with you, and kind of reflect on some changes you might need to happen. And, that kind of thing. Number 2, within your application, we want to see that you have a plan for sustainability, right? Think about different ways that you can utilize profits from your work-based learning project. Look at sponsorships and business partnerships. You don't necessarily have to have a specific plan in place for sustainability, but we definitely want you to have that thought out, right? If the thought is, or the plan is, that you're going to do this past a year or two, right? This partnership with a business is going to allow you to have funds beyond a certain point, right? Just something in place that we can see that you have thought about how this is going to prolong the business or the project at your school. 3, we know that there are a number of models that Sean and Dale talked about. Recognize that we know that those models need to include the community. That partnership is key with this RFP. We also know that a lot of the models don't necessarily fit specifically what you want or what you want to do. So we recognize that your models will change, or that your plan might include 1 or 2 different models. That's fine. Also, just explain that and show us how that's going to happen. And that's what we really want to see, of course, with that collaboration piece throughout the process. If you go to number 4, you'll see a part where you need to explain how your students and all the students that you're working with will be addressing the pre-ed skills. Please know that doesn't mean that you have to force and explain away how every single skill is being utilized if you're not really focusing on it. If what you're looking at, your project, really only works with workplace learning, workplace readiness and self-advocacy, explain those well, and don't worry so much on the other 1 or 2, but also know, and we all know, that they all kind of build on each other. So explain that and show how all that gets tied into your project as well. Or 5, when we talk about an evaluation plan, we don't necessarily mean this business itself that you're creating, if that's the way you're going, but how you plan to monitor the students, to evaluate the students. We all know in special ed and in education itself, we have progress monitoring. Know that there are a number of ways that you can do this. We talk about checklists, we talk about evaluations. There's all sorts of things that you all can do, and know that Eric and I are going to be here to help you support with how that goes. What you start off with may not be what you end with, and we recognize that, like Eric was saying, things really do change. So just know that we're really just looking at a plan that you all have, that you've thought about it, that you have things ready to go. And whether or not you find that they're helpful or not, that comes in the process as well. And then finally, something that we hope doesn't just overwhelm you, because we see like this really pretty, graphic organizer here. We're really just looking at a plan, a logical plan for how you're going to use these funds and how you're going to go through your project. keeping in mind, of course, the school year, keeping in mind the Christmas break, Thanksgiving break. Also that you may not necessarily, even if you're accepted and we like your project and we give it a go in December, we know that you may not necessarily get your funds in hand until like January or February, sometimes later. Know that that might happen, but there are things that you can be doing in the meantime, right? There's some planning, there's some meetings, there's some brainstorming, some dreaming that you can be doing. Keep in mind that we would like to see, you know, an itemized list of what you can see happening with your budget. Again, this does not mean that if you say you're going to use funds to buy 2 crickets, it doesn't mean that we're going to come back in August and say, you said you're buying 2 crickets, you bought 4 instead. Clearly, you know, you're going to get, that's not what we're going to be doing. We just want to make sure that your funds are being utilized the way you want them to be. And if you come into hiccups along the way, when you are in the process of your projects and of your businesses, that then Eric and I can come in and say, you know what, it looks like you all have hit a stumbling block. It would probably help if we were able to find funds to do this to help you also. Let's see if we can do that, right? So it's not just you, this is what you get, we'll see you later, goodbye, you know, good luck. Know that Eric and I will be there checking in on you and supporting you along the way. We'll be pulling from Sean and Dale along the way. They'll be our tech support also. And of course, having valuable resources. We're hoping to do on-site monitoring also, as long as that, you know, starts to happen. And of course, things have kind of, you know, been really different in the past couple of years. All of that to say that we're here to support you in the process, and we won't just leave you alone once, you know, you get your funds. I think we have done this. Okay, perfect. Now, as we think about some of the barriers you all might be coming on, and as we're questioning, you know, we'll move into question and answers. I am going to launch a poll. We are just curious to see if you all plan to submit an application. If you're totally never going to do it, not going to happen, or if you think that you are in the process, we might need some additional support. Of course, we are reviewing applications beginning of November, but we will have another cycle before the end of this year. We will review in December, and then of course we'll pick up back up in January. So please know, as Eric said, you don't have to submit by like tomorrow or, you know, Halloween day for it to be reviewed. That we will continuously be reviewing, and we are here and open to support you all. If it's a matter of just you have no idea how to open up this application and start, to kind of teasing out some of those specifics and reflecting on what Dale and Sean talked about during their presentation as well. Perfect.
There's another question about the career investigations, and yeah, I see it as kind of like, because like I think of a continuum of services, you know, like, hey, let's start off, and career investigation to me is kind of that starting point, right? We're having to like kind of, let's start looking at these and what the different jobs entail and what does it take to get to there. And so yeah, it's only like it's a single, you know, credit class that you typically would be within the class. And so like, you know, we like Sean was saying, you know, we have a lot of students that say they want to be video game designers or vet techs, or what was another one? Not vet techs, sorry, veterinarians. And then new one is also like, they want to be a YouTube star, right? And so these are things we can start exploring and helping them have an idea of what this looks like. Because I know oftentimes whenever I'd have someone, I want to be a veterinarian, you know, it's like, okay, well, let's look at that. This is what it requires. And they're like, no way. You know, I don't want 18, you know, like, yeah, I mean, you're going to have like many years after you graduate high school or college, and knowing that lots of times that's not realistic, but it doesn't help to tell someone that's not realistic for you. You're not going to be able to go through these programs, but outlining what it looks like can often help them like, oh, wow, that's not what I thought. I was like, yeah, but there's also vet tech, you know, and that's a certification. And some of our schools that have good ag programs actually offer vet tech certification programs there, right? And so just kind of thinking, yeah, so career investigation is something you can start off with, and that's definitely an idea that's how we would do it, kind of that continuum of service. We start with career investigation, then career prep, and then career explorations, and then, you know, 18+ program after that, and just really moving more and more and more into the community and how the students are continuing to grow in their skills and their knowledge of what they want to do, and then their just transition plans continue to evolve with that as well. The more that they know, the more that continues to grow. So
I think that's a great idea, that Sean already has, because
Mhm.
if you can kind of start out with the whole waterfront in terms of what's possible, then when you narrow it down, then those exploration opportunities where you might actually expose them to certain kinds of businesses is going to be much more efficient, rather than they see two things that really don't relate or they have no interest in, and then the one that they did have an interest in. So
Mhm.
this would help narrow it down. And I think you would use your time where you are taking those students around. You could use it more effectively. So I think that's a
Yeah.
great idea.
Yeah, we're asking about the link for the two webinars. I mean, we're going to post them on our website next week, and know that they're not the two previous ones aren't completely different. I mean, it's the same PowerPoint, and just really kind of the conversation of us thinking who the audience was, and then your questions is kind of what makes them different. But yeah, they'll be on our website next week. I'll post that here in a second, what that looks like. But this is our time we have available for you to ask questions. And so if you want to type some in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, kind of lead those discussions, and just try to have some quiet time so you can do that. And also, if you notice I'm throwing something, my dog decided that he wants to like get excited because I'm talking. I'm throwing this to keep him away from me. And then I'm thinking of like some of you that, you're more of these more isolated areas, and oftentimes, the big questions that come up is like, well, transportation, sure, we can provide transportation now, but what's going to happen when we're no longer there to provide transportation? And then also, well, we don't really have jobs, right? We have our Dollar General, and and if we're super lucky, maybe we have like a Sonic or McDonald's or something, Subway, something along those lines, right? Well, the reality is there's a lot of people around you working. There's a lot of people around you that don't have like good transportation, and they're able to find things out. So a lot of times it's just talking with people around you, right? Like how do people that don't have good transportation, how are they getting to those jobs? And finding those people and finding out how they're doing it. And then also there's a lot of jobs that they don't have a storefront. A lot of companies don't have a storefront, right? And so kind of looking at those and really talking to your families, right? And okay, so what businesses y'all connected to, and talking to the other teachers around you, and what businesses do they have? What business are they connected to? And finding resources that are already around you, and kind of looking at that. But again, that's something that we can definitely kind of support and help out with those things. But yeah, let us know what questions you have. I'm going to try to be quiet for a minute to give you space to ask a question.
And even if y'all have questions, y'all go back and talk to, your people this week or next week, or even right before Thanksgiving, right? I'm already thinking it's already going to be Thanksgiving next week, and it's not. But email us, get us on a Zoom, get us on the phone, via email. We're happy to just, help you out. Like Eric said, if you kind of filled it out and you just want to send it to us first before you kind of like a pre-trial kind of thing, we're happy to do that. The point is for us to get these funds out to you. We're not trying to, keep them and use them in any other way. We would just really like to make sure that there is a plan in place, right? And at the end of the day, it's about getting our students to get skills, and eventually get jobs and make their own money. And we'll definitely help along the way.
Yeah, home-based businesses, also web-based businesses, right? And so, home-based business, and it's oftentimes just kind of looking at what the needs are, because typically we just kind of think what's easy, what can we start, but also we can look at what are the needs and what can we provide. But then, home-based business, but a web-based business, that some of these people are providing, they're, the big one of the, coffee, we always say coffee cart, but another thing that seems to be really popular also is like the dog treats and that sort of thing. And like, do you really have a base for that? Maybe you don't, but also there's Etsy and there's other places online that can become, broaden who your consumer base is, right? And so kind of looking at that and like online, create those businesses that way too. But yeah, home-based businesses seems to be pretty popular, but also I think there's a lot of struggle. And also oftentimes what I see as a struggle is that it's really not the person with the disability that's running it. It's the family that runs it, and they run it in the student's name. And that's not really It's not really meeting the need, right? I mean, because honestly, because our students with disabilities, just like you and everybody else, having something to get up for the day, adds a lot of meaning and purpose to our lives. And if there's no other reason than that, that would be that would be a reason why to help kind of support those students get jobs. I mean, it's meaning to our lives, not going home and graduating to the couch, as we say. Let's help them get jobs. And I'm looking at the poll.
Oh, you can see it still? That's good.
I can see it. It pops up like randomly every once in a while for me. Does anyone else have any questions? You want to unmute yourself or type in the chat? Sean, can you think of anything that maybe we've covered the past couple of days? Yes. Someone have a question?
No, I would just say to people, whoever's still on, oftentimes this is a process and this is a conversation. I saw one comment that, I don't know where to begin. And I think the place to begin is wanting to begin. The place to begin is recognizing that there's more that can be done, and just having those conversations and seeing what it looks like. And I think that is something that these grants can do. Think about them as planning grants then, and say, we need some coordination time. I think people sometimes feel under the gun to go, I got to set up a program or an activity. But, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric and Jackie, but they can use this as some planning time too, to say, hey, we're just kind of out here, and we want to lend some structure to these ideas, but we need some help. We need some tools. We need some thoughts. And that's what I would say. So, again, when you're coming at it from the right place, there's no wrong first step. And so that's really what I would add.
So you have a specific question that you want to ask?
I think when I say where to start, the seminar yesterday, the Texas Collaborative Institute, all this great information, and then shared stuff. In my mind, I just keep seeing dollar signs, and thankfully the point of today was there is money that can be given. But when you go to either an administrator or supervisor or boss with these great ideas, I think we get shut down because they see that it requires more staff, more money, and being able to say, no, there are federal programs to help fund this. And oh, by the way, it's actually kind of a legal requirement. How do we have these conversations without it being that we have to do this so that we're not in compliance, but at the same time, I actually want to do this.
Right.
How do you have that conversation, and who do you start with? Is it your building principal? Is it your director? Where do you begin having these conversations?
Yeah, I mean, my experience is like finding someone that gets excited with you, and so because I had the same problem. I started teaching and I was in Houston, which is a smaller but large area, right? And I'm guessing you might be from a smaller area, and our SPED director thought that we were wasting our time, right? Like, you're supposed to be teaching, you just focus on English and math and these things. And it's like, we are doing that, yes, but we also, we want these students to have a future. And so we were really wanting to kind of get out there. And so we had a principal that had a kid with a disability. And so we were really able to get him kind of on board and start getting excited. And then so with him, we started kind of creating some of these opportunities for our students, which then got the families excited, which got the students excited, which got other teachers excited, and kind of started building from there. And then after that, the SPED director didn't have any choice but to get excited too, from that. And so that was kind of how we did it. And so if you can find someone that, can get excited with you, that's an administrator, and get them to kind of start supporting, getting out in the community and building some of these experiences and start showing what is possible, for these students, can be, really helpful. And then another thing I did too is like, and this might or might not be an opportunity for you, but at the beginning of each year we had like our PD day, and oftentimes we would have, a variety of different presentations and stuff. And so I would always put a presentation in where I would bring back students that had outcomes that you wouldn't have expected they would have had. Like I had one student, some students with a lot of behavior issues and that sort of thing, and then helping them, they'll come back and talk about not only what they were able to achieve, but what helped them be achieved and what they felt like kind of maybe held them back from achieving that once they were in school. Like I had one student that, so his thing was like, right, he's like, if I would get anxious, my thing is I'd go for throats, I'd throttle, right, and he's like, fortunately, I was never successful in that, but the reality was the reason why people would say you have a safe space, but I didn't actually have a safe space, and people didn't see me, being able to achieve the things I would achieve. And if they would have given me that safe space and giving me that stuff to achieve, and like this kid now ended up, he ended up going to, got a college degree, and then he struggled with getting a job, but they finally found a job that was able to work around the times that work for him and that sort of thing. And so, and also a lot of the students that, lower functioning, higher needs, that went straight to the workforce, and being able to show like, hey, once I kind of got there and people, saw the value in me, that really just, lowered down the behavior that I was having in the classes and that sort of thing. Does that help at all? You have any thoughts or questions in what I was just saying?
I'm going to keep it on mute because they're playing. We're in transition and it's
Okay.
loud. So, but yes, this is very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, Andrea, too, families can be a big asset. And to anybody who's out there wondering the same thing, if you had families approach a school board, if you had families approach a special ed director and say, hey, listen, we're interested in something different, that a lot of times can spur some change. But those aren't easy conversations to have, especially if you have administrators who are more dollars and cents oriented. So I'm feeling the pain on that one. Yeah.
Erica, you have a question?
I do. Thank you so much. I've attended all three of these because I'm new in my role, coming out of a life skills setting. So I love hearing all of the different ideas. I've got many pages of notes because I'm trying to start to build a plan for approaching my director in our high school campus administration. We previously had in our district several vocational courses that had very low enrollment numbers, and there sometimes didn't appear to be a clear distinction between the courses nor a solid year at a glance syllabus. And I believe that those attendance numbers were due to that, but also enrollment numbers, but also due to a lack of education of teaching our case managers what the purpose of these courses were. So I say that to let you know that unfortunately they dissolved almost all of those. Actually, they dissolved all of them for our general SPED population, and we only kept courses similar to that for our life skills population. Well, I step in after that decision is made, and I'm now kind of freaking out like, oh my goodness, we are not providing any of these opportunities beyond what CTE is offering. Now, what I've been told, and again, I'm building this case, is what I feel like I'm a lawyer. I'm building a case to support this. But what I've been hearing is that one of the reasons for getting rid of those courses was because it was viewed that those were the most restrictive learning opportunities for those students, which I do understand. And there's a huge push in Texas for students in special education to be enrolled in general education CTE courses with modifications. However, a lot of those in my school district aren't appropriate and would need drastic modifications for some of our students to participate. And we've taken a very academic approach in our district. So although we've expanded greatly 10 CTE academic tracks, we don't have any vet tech programs. We don't have any of the trade type programs either, except for welding, which again is not appropriate for all of our SPED students. So my concern is that, yes, of course, as Andrea mentioned, dollar signs can shut
Yeah.
things down, because they took the teacher that taught those vocational classes and divided her schedule to provide more inclusion support for students on our campus. So they essentially dissolved that position and absorbed it in another greater need. And like everybody else, we have many vacant positions, short-staffed, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
I want to be able to go to my director and the campus administrators here at the high school to present how, although vocational classes in a SPED setting are more restrictive than general ed and CTE, they aren't the most restrictive, and there's specific guidance to support why we would do those. So what are some things that have worked for other districts or campuses to approach why we need to have these? And I've got great info from TransCen here, but anything more I can add to that.
Right. Right. I mean, and you know, I mean, they have their indicator 14 data they have to look at, and then indicator, 13 and 14 data they have to look at, which, this directly feeds into that, which, again, that's another thing that the state looks at to determine funding, and then also with when they're saying inclusion, they're probably not thinking generally inclusion, because there's a PEMS report they have to put out that says, what's the percentage of our students that are, and these are the classes that are inclusion, and these are the classes that are self-contained, and then we want our percentage of the students to be in certain ones, and that's why there's a big huge push for co-teach, because co-teach is considered full inclusion, right? And so, I mean, personally, kind of once they start kind of pushing more of those co-teach classes, then your numbers start going up, and so I know, like, in the district I taught in, it was a big thought of that too, like a lot of the co-teach classes. Well, then offering some of these other courses didn't hurt those PEMS numbers. And then also, then you can, whenever you can create some local credit classes, which then don't go towards that at all, right? And so you can create a class that that will allow you to have the students that have these needs that are receiving SPED support services that aren't going to hurt those numbers that the state see, because they're not going to see those numbers because it's not a state PEMS class. Does that make sense? And so that'd be another way to kind of do that, because that's what they're looking at. They have their numbers, and you probably have seen it whenever you're filling out the IEPs. There's like I can't remember exactly, but they're a 40 student, they're a whatever student, and that sort of thing, and that just tells you the level of inclusion. And so the state docks them for the greater number they have that are not fully included, which is great. That's great, but it needs to also make sure the students have what they need as well. And so those are kind of some of the things that I know from being in administration in a school district that we did and looked at. Does that help? You have any other questions? Or
no, that helps. I feel like the mountain I'm attempting to climb is only taller given current staffing situations across the country, but also Texas and the general Austin area as well. So I'm in that plan building. I'm trying to strategically approach like almost like a 3-year plan. Like, hey, let's go back and let's integrate this course, because if I went, and like I mentioned, I've been talking with Round Rock ISD. Now it's a much larger ISD. I'm in a 1 high school district. So for them, they have a fabulous program. I don't think we can get there quickly, and it might be it would be wonderful if right now where we're developing courses for next year, we can add this one in, and then the following year add another, which is kind of what they've done with our CTE courses and our career tracks for those the greater population. But no matter what, because we do have the vocational courses for our life skills students, those are going to be easy to be revamped. And I know that the teachers and administration will appreciate having guidance, because there are some state credit courses that we can change those into with lots of given resources. So,
right. And then, are these class offerings, that they're just determining not to. So what I did too is I would actively recruit, because we would have that issue too, right? You have to have a certain number of students within the class, or we're going to shut it down. We're not going to fund this class. And so I would actively recruit students for those classes and, speaking with the students, speaking with families, speaking with teachers, and make sure that we had enough students that were actually signing up for the classes too. I mean, I had to do a lot of that as well.
Exactly. And that kind of goes to that piece that I think in the past, prior to me taking this role, I don't think that case managers, students, and families really understood what those courses were, what the purposes were for those courses, and what the benefits were. So that's another kind of component of presentation is showing the importance, linking it directly to some of the research and data that A&M and TransCen has provided in these trainings, but also to look at the future's outcomes and the positive impact that adding these courses can provide for our population.
Yeah, maybe you can outline for them, like, okay, we're gonna offer this class again this next school year. Here's what it's gonna look like, and here's how we know that it's gonna have the true impact. Because they're probably thinking of, here's the past, what it's looked like, and it's really done nothing. Like, they just go in the classroom and they sit around and maybe watch some employment videos or whatever, right? Well, here's we're going to offer this, and they're actually going to get out into the community, and we're creating these relationships, so we know that they're going to be in the community and they're going to be getting these job experiences. And that's another thing, what these funding that you could look at. I mean, we can provide funding. Think of the different outside the box what these funding can provide. I mean, we can provide funding for training. You need someone that needs this training. This can pay for that training, or maybe if your district's okay with that, could pay for a sub for that person to be able to attend that training, because that can be an issue. And also for the paraprofessionals to attend the training, because that they need it just as much as the teacher needs it, right? And then another thought of like building those relationships in the communities. Like, if we only had the relationships in the community, we'd be able to provide these opportunities for our students, but I don't have the time to get out there and build those relationships. Maybe you could, with this funding, you could hire a retired teacher part-time to go out and build these relationships with these businesses, so that the next school year you're able to go get the students out there and start getting involved in that. Threw me off.
I just got to step away.
Oh yeah,
another call myself, but
running pretty far.
Yeah,
right.
For both, it really brings up, Eric, I think, some interesting potential technical assistance that your project could do. And another thought I had, both Erica and Andrea, is approaching the transition technical assistance folks from Sam Houston with this question. Vicki Mitchell, if you know Vicki Mitchell and Bryn Biggs.
They were the ones that talked to me yesterday. I didn't realize who Vicki Mitchell was. We were in a breakout session with 4 people, and one was like the black screen with the mute, like she wasn't there, but she was there. And then I'm just airing all this dirty laundry of like, what do I do? And I had no idea she was like the main lady. I was like, oh gosh, okay. So yeah, it was. So her first suggestion was to get in compliance with our assessments. So we're going to work on that. And we have a career prep program here for our gen ed, and we have some of our students with special needs in that class. And so he's actually going out and working. And so I never thought, like Eric was saying, it would be more restrictive if it is labeled a SPED class, but why not just devote some of our resources to a career prep program that is already there? Can we not modify and accommodate for our SPED kids in a gen ed career prep class? Because we actually have that here. It would just like drumming up the popularity of it. I think that's what Eric was saying, possibly. Like, if it's already there, just recruit. And then if the demand is there, and then we can support those students just like we do in our inclusion setting. We're kind of running into a similar problem with Erica. So I think they're playing around with the idea of, can we provide inclusion support through the use of a para? And I guess the answer for that is yes.
What's that? Sure, you can. That's not the best. Yeah, you can definitely do that. I mean, it's a cheaper model, and so a lot of times people do that for sure. And then, but if you
it's not ideal,
but you can find some really great ones out there. And then if you can actually provide them some training, because that's probably the big one that doesn't work, because we don't provide them training. We just say, here, go. Good luck.
Right. And I think that's the thing, is if our heart is in, yes, they need history, and yes, they need that science, but what we really want to do is give them this work experience. So we have to cut some corners somewhere. And if we can provide the support through a para in these classes that do matter, we're not trying to say that the academics don't matter, but they're not receiving a greater need, which would be this work experience. Right. So certified teachers who have more knowledge and more training could be there in the career prep setting. I almost feel like we're getting, it's not what you would think, but that's what's going to make those are those indicators that will show for success. And we talked about it being the greatest version of who these students can be in our community. And I think when these people that are on the board or have students with disabilities as a biological child realize, oh, this is going to make a difference on our community. They're not sitting at home collecting federal funds. Like, let's get them working. So I think there's buy-in. Like, yes, it is going to cost us some money, but they're not going to be sitting at home. They're not handing out the vapes in the school. They're not, I'm doing a webinar. I just had a kid come in. So, I think there will be buy-in. It's just no one wants to hear it because they just see dollar signs. And I don't know how to help them see, like, there's money for this. And it had to do with those, the PEMS codes, the CCMR.
Yeah.
Some type of point system. I want them to see, like, we can do this and not have to hire tons more teachers, and we could do it with what we have, I think.
Right. Well, and there's another model too with a lot of the CTE classes called, it's a partners class. And so
Partners.
yeah, and so like you can do it with any CTE class. Typically people will start off with like a partners PE or partners art or something along those lines to kind of help make sure that the students are getting what they want. That's the idea, right? And so what you have is your sped students, getting, oftentimes unfortunately placed in there, right? But then you have the gen ed students who are signing up for that because they know that they're going to be there to support your special ed students that are in the classroom. And so it's oftentimes more focused on your life skills students. And so like we would, and so this came out of, like, we have a lot of these gen ed teachers are like, you're putting these students in my class and I'm not serving them well. I know I'm not, and I want to be able to serve them better. How can I do that? And so then we kind of created these partners classes. And so like, okay, well, we're going to still be putting these students in there, but then we're going to have these other students who, maybe request to be in this class. And what they're going to be doing is they're going to help our special ed students make sure that they are actually gaining from that content.
Is it similar, like our principal brought in Special Olympics as a true PE class, but it's not just for our students with special needs. We also have, and it might be an even mix of students with special needs and then our non-disabled peers. And so it's this beautiful, you never know.
Yeah, so your partner, you're gonna partner up with another student to help make sure they're getting what they need to actually access. And so what oftentimes it would look like, so the teacher would say, to the gen ed students, like, here's what we're doing today, and I need you to teach this to your partner.
Okay, that's awesome.
And so, I mean, and when you're teaching it to someone else, you're learning more than you're actually someone else trying, and so really everybody gains from it, and they gain a lot. And oftentimes these are the students that are wanting to go into the teaching field or something along those lines, have some other that would sign up to want to be in that class to be a partner. But you do run into problems if you have enough classes, and so it can be a struggle of do we have enough offerings to offer a partners class, but it is an option to look at.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to have to sign off, but I will be contacting a lot of you with questions. I'm excited. I left inclusion and applied. I did all math, and now all these windows are opening up of attend this session, go to this workshop, do this about all this transition. And it's learning what indicator 13 and indicator 4, 13 and 14. These acronyms that they're throwing on. WOWI, WO.
Oh, what WIOA?
WIOA, WIOA. I don't know. So I'm going to be learning a lot, and I'll probably just reach out to.
Yeah, please do.
I saved your name too. Just places to go visit and see what we're doing to work smarter, because nobody wants to spend more money, but I think a lot of people can benefit from these little small changes. So,
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, y'all have a great day. I really appreciate your help.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. I don't know if you're just hanging around but does anyone have any other questions? If not, we're going to go ahead and head out. We're about 30 minutes over, so really appreciate you sticking around, everyone. Everyone's jumping off. All right, appreciate it.